Good afternoon, everybody. Two thumbs up. Eldert and I are real happy to be here. Flew all the way in from Seattle. We're going to give you a little bit of what we've been working on for the past months, years. So.
Yes, yeah.
All right, let's get the ball rolling. So, I'm sure you all know this by heart. By heart. Sorry about that. So within Azure, we have three main brokers, and we have a stream processing service. The first broker that I'm going to talk about here is EventGrid. It's our discrete message broker. Also supports pub subpattern, pull messages, MQTT, simple queues. It's rather excellent. If you haven't tried it of late, I definitely recommend you take a look at it. It also handles eventing across all of Azure. So like when you write a storage blob file, it'll trigger an event. And EventGrid's what handles it for all of Azure. Service Bus. Service Bus is our enterprise queue service. It gives you all the wonder and glory of something you might expect with JMS or MQ, and it's our own substrate. Service Bus actually predates Azure. It goes way back. So good things to say about that. And then Event Hubs. Event Hubs is our enterprise level streaming platform. It allows us to handle massive loads of data. It supports services like GitHub. It's used for all of our internal Azure billing services. It's used by like everything under the sun in Azure. And then there's ASA. And ASA does stream analytics work. It's also a foundational Ring 0 service. By that I mean it's critically important and in every single Azure region, and it's used to process data. Those self-same billing events that I noted that run on Event Hubs are also processed by Stream Analytics. We're big, and we run really well. That's the short version. So we operate with basically a 5.9 SLA. I said basically because it's not every single moment of every single day, but we're pretty much running at a 5.9. We handle a large amount of data, 377 terabytes.
Trillion.
Trillion. I said terabytes. That would be the jet lag, by the way. So keep me honest. 377 trillion requests come through every month through messaging. 607 petabytes of data is ingested, which is pretty good. I don't have to read all the stats. My favorite one actually out of the whole list, there's two of them. One is the 5.9 SLA that we run at. And the second one is 100% of our top 500 customers use our messaging services, as well as Microsoft very heavily. So no Azure messaging presentation would be complete without a note about Fabric. You guys have heard about Fabric, right? I'm going to be a little humorous in the end of the day. I call it humor. So Fabric is a SaaS opinionated form of what you can deliver on top of Azure, in short. So it is built on top of the same Azure services you know and love, Event Hubs, Stream Analytics, EventGrid, and something we don't have yet in Azure, which is the messaging catalog, which is like a schema registry. We will get it to Azure, it's just not there yet. But Event Streams is an opinionated layer on top of those self-same services. So it's like SaaS version of our PaaS products, but since it's not truly SaaS, it's more like a PaaS and SaaS, more of a SPaaS. I don't think that's the official name. So, infrastructure upgrades. So this is a little bit about what's been going on for the past year. So if you take a look at our list of recently released, it's not as big as previous years. And there's a really good reason for it. And that reason is we've been investing very, very heavily on making the service better, stronger, more secure. You guys may have heard of the Security Future Initiatives announcement, where Microsoft wanted to double down on security. It wasn't good enough to be the best. We had to be the best of the best. So we had to have no flaws, because you only have to make one mistake for people to lose trust in you. So we firmly believe it. There's no issue more important than a security issue. So we've been working across all of Azure, across all of Microsoft, to implement improvements on what we already have today. Quality objectives. Event Hub, Service Bus are foundational to Microsoft. They can't go down. They're also for our top 500 customers. They can't go down. So we've been adding more resilience into our platform. That includes zone resilience or zone redundancy. We have today any new creates in any AZ region are zone redundant, straight up. We don't even ask you. It just is. And you get charged nothing extra for that. And we'll go into a little bit on what that means in a few minutes. And then modernization. Remember that thing where I said Service Bus predates Azure? It goes way back. And some of the cruft in the earlier, is cruft a good word? We'll go with cruft. Some of the earlier system architectures definitely could have been improved over the years. The product's updated and all the rest of it, but we still had some substrate that could have been better. And we've been investing heavily across Azure to bring everything up to snuff. The reasons for that are not just because it's nice to have things on the new shiny thing, but we actually get better performance, we get better resilience, we get better security capabilities by being on the latest and greatest. Also, our boss told us to do it. So, with that, I'm going to let Eldert talk about our roadmap.
Yeah.
Give you the wand of power.
Thank you. Yes, so the roadmap. So this is what we are expecting to bring out in the next months, years. So first of all, Jira application GA, currently in public preview. Basically, Jira application with full data across multiple regions. We'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. Then batch delete GA. So we currently have batch delete out. You have to use the beta SDK for this. But with batch delete, basically what it allows you to do, as the name kind of suggests, is delete messages in batches. Upsides of this is we delete them server-side. Like until now, basically what you would do, you would write the console application, do receive and delete, get all the data in, and then just ignore it. Of course, that means you have network traffic, you have CPU usage, etc. With batch delete, we delete them server-side. Now also, if you're using our SDKs, there's also a purge method in the SDK where you can actually say, okay, just purge everything that's older than X. And it will just do the whole loop behind the scenes for you. So that just makes it very easy to say, oh, I have a dead letter queue, I have 10 million messages in here, purge everything that's older than 2 days, and just get rid of that. By the way, valid scenario, I have multiple customers that are running in these situations. Durable terminus. So durable terminus basically allows you to recover a connection after a connection break. So let's say we are doing service upgrade or your connection drops for a second. Basically what happens is your connection breaks, and today what we do is we release all the message states. So that means your message logs and session logs are lost, which basically means you have messages that's being processed, you lose your connection. Now this is still being processed, but the next consumer comes up and gets that same message, and now you might be running into duplicate processing and things like that. Durable terminus is going to resolve that. Basically what durable terminus we will do is the client says, hey, I'm this client, please give me back my terminus. It will re-establish the connection, and you just keep working on the same messages. So basically you keep your message logs and session logs. Standard to premium SKU migration with data. I think this also is kind of self-explanatory. But yeah, today we have SKU migration from standard to premium, but without the data. So you still have to shuffle over the data yourself. Now, of course, if you are running this in production, then you get into consistency issues, etc. So what we are doing is actually allowing you to migrate from standard to premium with all your data in place. A bit more on that later as well. Chaos Studio integration for AC down. So we already have entity down simulation with Chaos Studio. We're also going to add a zone down. where basically you can, in your chaos testing, you can just say, hey, what would happen if an entire zone goes down? What is being hit? And that allows you to actually see, okay, are we prepared, like with the right setup, to make sure that if something like that happens, we can actually continue and are failing over, etc. Horizontal scaling of partitions for partition namespaces. So partition namespaces on Service Bus allow you to have multiple partitions, 1 to 4 at the moment, and each partition gets 1 to 16 message units. And so this is especially for customers that have very big workloads where 16 MUs is not enough. They can add more, more partitions. Today, however, that only works if you create a new namespace where you can set a number of partitions. So what we want to do is basically allow you to scale up your number of partitions. Where you can just say, okay, I want to go from 1 to 2 partitions, so I can now scale from, instead of 1 to 16, I can now scale to 32 MUs. Yeah, so initial focus will be scale up. That's what we hear most customers from. We're also going to look into scale down, although that will be later on. And finally, management SDK support for the local emulator. So as I think everyone here will know by now, we have a local emulator out for dev test work. So we have been adding features to that to get that up to parity with what makes sense for the dev test. And the next big one will be that managed SDK, which allows you to create or do CRUD operations on the fly on your entities. And this also makes sure that we can support mass transit and Service Bus, etc., which use this quite extensively. So that's also coming soon. So that's the Service Bus roadmap. Next, the EventOps roadmap. A couple of things will be the same. So Azure application, like I said, we are working on this public preview right now, and we'll talk more about this in a moment. Large message support, GA, so we allow messages up to 20 megabytes on the dedicated tier. So that's also coming soon. Kafka parity, so we have Kafka streams and transactions that are currently in public preview, going to go GA soon. And we're also going to update the Kafka admin to version 3.9 and introduce group persistence. So this will make sure that we have that full Kafka parity so that you can just point your Kafka application to EventOps and it will just work. Standard premium SKU migration with data. We already discussed it in Service Bus. We are doing the same for EventOps. There's a bunch of enterprise features that we want to introduce. So custom domains for dedicated. So you can actually set up your own domain on your dedicated cluster. Compression for events up to capture with data. So basically gzipping the data that is being pushed into capture, so to reduce that size. And a composite cluster utilization metric for EventOps dedicated autoscale. So basically what we're doing is we are going to introduce one metric to rule them all. Today, if you look at the metrics, like you look at CPU, you look at memory, disk, I/O, etc., we want to simplify that, where you basically have just one metric that tells you, do I need to scale up, yes or no? And then also, do I need to scale down, yes or no? So instead of you doing all that, like, okay, this sounds about right, we just tell you, like, hey, this is where you should scale. Initially on EventOps dedicated, but we'll also be coming to Service Bus and EventOps Premium at some point as well. And finally, the Chaos Studio integration for AC Down, which you already discussed. So now let's talk a bit more about geo-replication.
Geo-replication. Before you do that, are these things cool? Good? Yes? Who's interested in these features? Oh, nice. How about these? Even more. Oh, Service Bus is winning. All right, geo-replication. Has anybody tried it out? How many hands, show of hands, how many people have tried out geo-replication feature in preview? Oh, well. Well, we'll still talk about it. So we're really proud of this capability. It's taken 4 teams running across, working together to deliver this capability. It's pretty amazing for what it does, and yet exposes it so simply. So it's replicating your entire namespace, the data, the metadata, everything, to the region you select. Today we only allow 1 secondary. We are talking about adding another secondary, so you could have up to 2 secondaries later. The capability allows you to set it for an RPO of 0, so you'd actually have synchronous replication or asynchronous. With synchronous replication, We receive the message at the primary, we send it to the secondary, it writes it there, and then we write it to the primary, and then we ACK the client. So if we get it, it's written in 2 regions. If you do an RPO greater than 0, we get it to the primary, we write it, then we send it off to the secondary where it's written. So 2 different models based on what's more important, your data or your application. Customers control the failover. There's way too many variations on why you might want to fail over or not. We call it promotion, but failover essentially. Eldert will dive into that in more detail later, but we don't have an automatic failover for this. And then there's no client changes required. So to use the feature, you don't really do anything different. You simply enable it with another region, and your client, the namespace, points to the new endpoint in DNS automatically. You don't have to touch anything. You don't have to set up a load balancer. You don't have to set up a function app to replicate your data, or a logic app for those of you logic app folks. It's all built in. So it is rolling out right now as we speak. I was really hoping I'd be here so I could make some sort of silly joke about a double-decker service bus or something else like that, like I did last year. But it's rolling out as we speak. It should be out hopefully next week. It all depends on how the deployments all wrap up. We have thousands of clusters worldwide. And this one can't be enabled for G8 until it's updated everywhere. This will be supported on Service Bus Premium, Event Hubs Premium, and Event Hubs Dedicated. We were hoping to have Event Hubs Premium in preview earlier, but the timing didn't work out right. So it'll be GA and visible for the first time all at the same time. We don't have support yet for large messages, but that's coming in a couple months. It's like the only feature that's not quite there yet. Also, streams and transactions for Event Hubs, because they're still in preview and they have some extra work to be supported on your application. And then the pricing, yes, go ahead. The large message? So large message support for Event Hubs is up to 20 meg, and it's only available in dedicated. So it's from where we are today up to 20. It's in preview now. And then on Service Bus.
Yeah, so Service Bus, anything that's larger than 1 megabyte and can go up to 100 megabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Pricing, you pay, for dedicated, you're already paying for the cluster. So you're not going to pay extra for another cluster if you already have it. You have to have 2 clusters for this to work. You don't get charged by the namespace if you're using dedicated. But you do pay a data replication fee. It basically covers the back-end processing on both sides as well as the data replication stuff. For premium Service Bus and premium Event Hubs, you will pay, if you were scaled to 2 MU, you'd be paying for 4 MU because you're using double in 2 regions. Nothing really shocking there, but worth calling it out. So what does it mean to be reliable in our new universe, right? So if you were to go to a non-zone redundant region, you're just talking about our standard Service Bus or Event Hubs deployment, when we receive a message, we write it 3 times on 3 separate hosts. So in the event that one of the VMs fails, we have redundant copies, right? So this gives you resilience across your virtual machines. Availability zones, well, those virtual machines are now in different data center structures. Those data centers or availability zones are often in different towns. It's the same Azure region, but you've got the structures physically separated. This gives you redundancy for something really bad. Though in one job I had somebody trip over a power line and knock out a data center. but I don't think Azure does that. Still, the whole idea is to give you resilience against a large system failure. The software is still the same layer. It's still one service bus cluster, one event hubs cluster. And so you're looking more at the redundancy of the substrate than our software. And then you have yes, now I'm going to back up.
Does the single zone feature apply to Service Bus standard also?
The which one? Availability zones?
No, the single zone.
The single zone. No, so that's a good point. You had to point that out. But yes, the question was, does the single zone statement there apply to Service Bus standard? And the answer is no, because Service Bus standard operates different for its persistent layer. So, do you want to elaborate? This is your baby.
No, but we do have availability zones now for the standard.
Yes.
So yeah, so not the single zone, but we do have availability zones.
But it's not writing 3 copies because that same storage substrate is used by Service Bus Premium, Event Hubs Premium, Event Hubs Dedicated. So that 3 copy thing, that 3 copy per the single zone thing is also coming soon to Event Hub standard. We're migrating things for that. But yes, I should have led with that. That's a good point. And then Service Bus standard uses a different storage mechanism behind the scenes that's not using the same tech stack. So while we are bringing conformity, we're not there across the board yet. Georeplication. So with georeplication, you still have 3 copies, oh, was that a question? Sorry. 3 copies, one on each on a different VM. If either or both of the regions are AZ enabled, then you've got redundancy across your data centers or your availability zones. And then with georeplication, you also have redundancy across your geographic regions and your software deployments, because the software deployment in UK West is definitely not the same one in UK South, right? So if something awful happened to the software, whatever in the stack in UK West, that doesn't impact the stuff in UK South. Failover is possible. So, does it all make sense? It's good. Enterprise. So I want to talk a little bit here about networking, because the reality behind something like georeplication is that it's not as simple as flipping over the queue. You guys all know that your applications are often more complex and more structured with more dependencies than just a service bus queue or an event hubs topic. And so if, like many others, you have your stuff in an Azure virtual network, how would you construct it? Well, we suggest that you peer your 2 networks if you have stateful services within the virtual networks, so that you could do things where you fail over your service bus dependency. This is, by the way, suggestive guidance as opposed to declarative. It depends totally on your application, but with peering your stateful application in your first primary environment can switch over to use the stateless applications in your secondary environment, while they point cleanly and easily to your now new primary that's in UK West. And then finally, from your on-premise system, you can fail over to the stateful application that hopefully you have some other form of geographic redundancy to move your data so that you can move your on-premise pointer to the new instance. Failover is a complex thing. And by the way, when I talk about complexity involved, that applies to us as well. So we do AZ down drills. We do region down drills. Just this past weekend, we did a region down, not in a bad way. This was a this was a new region we were bringing up, and so we used it for the purpose of a test. We don't knock down active regions just to test them. Yeah, just in case somebody wondered. But
well, maybe Western Australia.
Wow. Wow. Dude, that could impact like tens of customers. Sorry. You paid me for that. But the reality is that these applications have a large amount of complexity and moving parts. And that if you are going to set up geo-redundancy for your application, your entire thing, you have to think the whole thing through. And you can't believe it'll work if you don't exercise it. That's the moral of that part of the story. Second part, if you are using networking, more than likely you have some smidgen care about security and network isolation. And so within Azure, we have a few of our own little interesting ways to isolate your networks or isolate your services. Service endpoints is one of them. It allows you to set an ACL on VNets and subnets. So just like you say, I want to allow traffic from these IPs, with service endpoints, you say, I want to allow traffic from these virtual networks and these subnets. It's a great feature, but you have to keep in mind that it has to be set up in your secondary system if you're using it on your Event Hubs namespace or your Service Bus namespace. Private endpoints, though, is a wee bit more complex. How many of you guys use private endpoints? Dang. All right. So hopefully you already know all this and you'll teach me. But private endpoints are an IP inside your virtual network that gives you access to your service. So if you're using private endpoints to your Event Hub topic, then it's manifested as an IP inside your virtual network. So when you looked up my namespace.servicebus.windows.net from inside your virtual network, then it will point to that IP in your virtual network. The flaw with peering your virtual networks and using the same DNS zone is that there's only one IP for that name in your private networks. You lose your redundancy if you use one Azure DNS private zone with your private networks for geo-redundancy with Service Bus and Event Hubs. That's because the private endpoint doesn't have multiple IPs in it. So you have two choices. You can set up two zones, or you can update the IP when you fail over. At this point, I'm going to encourage you to have two separate zones. I don't have the ability. This is in the network. The question from Rick was, why don't you do that for me? It's a good question, but I don't have the ability to do that today. It is actually a good question. So it's also on the list of things that I'm pursuing is how do I get a proper resilience? We are not alone in this. Other services have geo-redundancy within Azure, and they suffer the same challenge today. I don't mean to throw Azure networking under the service bus, but there it is, right? But we'll work with them on see if we can get a wee bit of an improvement for it. All right, back to Eldert.
So let's talk a bit about the scenarios where you want to do failover. So in the public preview that we are running, I've been talking to many customers, and this is basically one of the first questions that comes up, like, okay, but when do I actually need failover? Like, what kind of scenarios can I solve with this? So first of all, the regional outage disaster recovery. So this is really about, hey, something is really bad, like my entire zone is down, I have big, like Azure has been having big issues. Now, still, like Christina already mentioned, it's still a manual process, like you initiate, because we don't know when you want to initiate this. Like, even if a region is down, you might still say, but hey, I cannot just switch over Service Bus, like I have all these other applications around this, it needs to fail over in a certain way, so you are in control. Also, we don't know, like, how long can you survive without this? Like, it's like, oh, this has to be up again in 10 minutes, or is this like, okay, if it's up in an hour, we're okay. So that might also impact, like, the processes you put around this, investigations, etc., where you at some point decide, okay, this is the point where we want to fail over. So, of course, regional outage, disaster recovery is a pretty clear one. Like, if all of Azure shows red in the portal, then probably something is very bad. It might also be that just your single namespace that has some kind of issue, though. You might just be on a cluster that's very busy at that moment. Your namespace might be having some other issue, where we cannot immediately see like, hey, this one single namespace is having an issue, but you as a customer, of course, for you, this might be an outage because that one namespace is your entire production namespace. So once again, this gives you the option to say, okay, maybe Azure itself is healthy, but my single namespace is not healthy, so I want to just fail over my namespace, which you also allow with this. And then third one, also very important, like I already just mentioned, like you might have a big complex landscape. You might have other reasons why you want to fail over Service Bus. Service Bus might be working fine, but maybe your cluster, your containers are not running correctly. You need to fail over your AKS, and Service Buses go with it. You might be saying, hey, I'm going to do a big deployment in this environment, in this region. I'm going to switch over to the other region, update this region, and then fail back again. So all these different scenarios are things that you have to think about. So you have to think about, okay, when do I need to fail over? Really about your process. Like, okay, how long does it take me to fail over? Who needs to be involved? What is for me an unhealthy scenario? Those are the things that you really have to think about and make sure you have those processes. And that's also where we come to the last point, regular testing. Don't set this up and then hope that once you have to do a failover, everything will just work, because you might have missed something. The whole networking that Christina was just talking about, like that's something that you want to test out. Is everything working as I'm expecting it to work? Can I actually reach my namespace if I have a failover and my VNets are set up? So regular testing is also very important. Maybe don't do this on your production namespace, but at least have like a testing environment or something like that, where you have a same configuration, and you can actually, yes, this works. And you can also test out those procedures. Like, okay, if something goes wrong, who should be doing what what are the things that we might have to fail over, etc. Make sure you test that and make sure you set up the procedures. Now, the second question I always get is, okay, but can we automate this somehow? So, yes, you can automate this. So, first of all, there are a couple of different things that you probably want to look for before deciding, do I want to fail over? So the first one is the replication lag. So this is basically the RPO that you set. So the lag between the primary and secondary is what we call the replication lag, and that's a metric. Now, normally that lag should be pretty low, like we are constantly replicating from primary to secondary. This mostly, by the way, with async replication, because synchronous replication does have replication lag because it always has to be 0. But let's say you say, okay, my maximum replication lag, my RPO is 10 minutes. Everything is like a couple of seconds, everything is fine. All of a sudden you see that climbing up. Then there might be a point where you might be saying, okay, I need to investigate this and see what's happening. It's just do I have a big influx all of a sudden, or is something else going on? Also your client and server side exceptions. Like if you are getting all of a sudden a bunch of exceptions that you cannot reach your endpoint or something like that, there might be something wrong there as well, where you want to do some investigation and see, hey, is this a point where I want to fail over? And the message metrics. If all of a sudden I get, like normally I have 1,000 messages per second, and all of a sudden that drops to 0, there might be something wrong between my client and the service. Once again, a point where you probably want to do some investigation. Now, you can also automate this with Azure Monitor. You can actually set up alerts on your Azure Monitor and run action. So the simplest action would be, okay, I will just, whenever this happens, I will just call the failover endpoint. The failover endpoint is, by the way, very simple. It's just an ARM call that you do. You specify your new secondary region, and it fails over to that secondary region. That might be a very simple one, but probably not what you want to do, because it might just be like, not an issue, but just a large influx of messages, for example. So what I would recommend instead is basically build an orchestration with logic apps. Logic apps you can do like call out to a Teams environment, have like support looking into this, make sure you do escalations as needed, orchestrate the process around this so that you have the right people on call that know what to look at, and can then decide, okay, do we want to do a failover, yes or no? So now let's look what we are doing with the replication feature that allows this to do.
Don't worry, we won't be too long. We know you guys are waiting for alcohol, so priorities. All right, event mesh. So today you have one namespace FQDN. You use it for publishing, you use it for consuming. It's your one-stop shop. What we're looking at for an event mesh is a read-only FQDN that'll go to the closest region. Ooh. Ah. This would be event hubs only for the obvious reason that, you know, it has no meaning on a queue. We're hoping to preview this in early 2026. Who thinks this would be interesting? I got one. Nobody else? I should have retried that. Anyhow, people also call this read-only namespaces. We're calling it, or read-only FQDNs. Somebody else called it read-only namespace, but we're calling it event mesh. So we're really excited about it.
Yes.
And now you get more Eldert.
So this is one part where the logic that we have for your application can help us, but there's some other parts as well. So first of all, the migration. So I already talked a bit about this in the roadmap, but so the migration, like the biggest downside of our current migration from standard to premium is that you don't get the data with it. Now, of course, what we built for your application, we can now just reuse for SKU migration as well. Basically, we'll just set up a new instance behind the scenes for you. We'll do the migration of the data, and then we just fail over to that new instance, and we tear down the old instance, which was standard, and now you're on premium. So initially, it will be from standard to premium migration. We're also looking into, can you downgrade? Can you go to dedicated, things like that. But this is our first focus.
Who's interested in that? I know you are. That's it? All right.
Then region migration. So there might be different reasons why you want to migrate to a region. Maybe a new region has been deployed that you want to use now. Maybe you are running into data sovereignty where you have to go to a different country, things like that. So what we want to do is also allow you to basically say, okay, I want to migrate to this region. So what you will do is this multi-step migration. We might do something similar for SKU migration, not quite sure yet, but well, basically what we want to do for region migration is saying, okay, I want to migrate, for example, in this case, North Europe to West UK. What it will do is your namespace will keep running. You can just talk to your namespace, and in the background, we start replicating that data. Once the data is caught up, we just keep it updated. At some point, you can say, okay, now I want to switch over. All the data is there. Now I want to switch over. What we do at that point is we stop the ingress, we replicate the last data, and then we do the switch, which basically just DNS switch under the table, under the counter. It's now pointed to that UK region, and then we delete the old region in North Europe. And so this way, once again, like it's very easy for you. You just say, I want to migrate either from SKU or from region. We take care of all the data processing. We make sure everything is up and running here. And then you only have a little bit of downtime when we do actually the switch, because like, of course, you have to do a DNS switch to point to a different cluster. But so it's very small downtime, and you can just continue right away. Your production just keeps running. Final part, cross namespace forwarding. Christina just talked about event mesh. And as she said, like Service Bus, we cannot do a read-only namespace kind of thing and read-only FQDN, because Service Bus doesn't do reads. We do destructive reads, which is basically saying we take a lock on the message, which is a write for the lock. We remove the message, which is again a write. So our reads are actually not just reads, it's destructive reads. So we cannot say, okay, here you have a second endpoint, and you can just start reading from that, because then you start in the whole situation. Now you have two clients that take the first message, who's going to win, etc. So what we are going to do instead is cross namespace forwarding. It's been a request from the community for quite some time already. Basically what we are going to do is, we already have auto forwarding within a namespace where you basically just say, okay, this entity, whenever a message comes in here, forward it to this other entity. We are now just going to allow you to say, okay, this other entity might just be in a different namespace. So it might be in a different region, or the other one is what I also hear quite a lot is where customers want to have an incoming namespace for their external partners, but they have another namespace where they do the actual processing, etc. And they can then block that off, etc. So they can add more security features, etc. on there. So those kind of scenarios this will allow. And this basically, let's say you send something to the one namespace, we then auto forward it. But if you want to say, okay, I want to actually have this on multiple regions, just use a topic, have one subscription where you might read from UK South, and then another topic where subscription that forwards to each US region, and then you read from there as well. So there's different ways if you want to have like multiple copies that you want to read. Topics and subscriptions are of course still work from that. And you can just set an auto forwarding rule to a different namespace on that specific subscription.
Now, who likes that feature? Ooh,
Good.
That one crushes Event Crash.
So with that, thank you everyone. So day one already happened, the session from Kevin and Alicia. If you did not see it, the recording should be out at some point. Also tomorrow, Clemens and Roberto are going to talk about event-driven applications with Azure Messaging. If you want to reach out to us, please reach out. Also, we have a blog, a YouTube channel. And if there's any questions, please let us know or come up to us at the conference.
All right. Thank you, guys.